One of the things you emphasized in a recent article was that uh, you're frustrated by the, I guess, the phrase or term dropping out, that women and mothers are dropping out of the workforce right now, when in fact you feel they've been, in essence, forced out. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. So the language that we hear a lot about what's happening with women in the workforce is there's a statistic that's been going around. Over 860,000 women left the workforce between August and September. And we often frame that as dropout. And the problem I have with that term is that it really makes it seem like it's a personal choice. It's about someone who has a lot of value judgment. It's about someone who can't hack it or isn't willing to work hard, lacks grit, determination, and that's absolutely not the case of what's happening with mothers in America. Many mothers who are being forced out of the workforce really have no choice in terms of there's virtual school around the country. Really no public policy support. I mean, we've been abandoned by the government, and this is framed as a personal choice.
So speaking of abandoned by the government, our initial policy response was actually 4 policy responses earlier this year, but the big one that everybody talks about was the CARES Act. And we've pretty much exhausted all of the resources that were provided by the CARES Act that was passed earlier in March. And there's been a lot of discussion about CARES Act 2.0, a second version. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on where you think the initial act fell down and where you think the next act ought to go in terms of hitting this demographic of women who are literally being shoved out of the workforce.
Yes, I think the first CARES Act, I think, was a Band-Aid for a bullet wound. And I think that it was very good that a lot of workers and parents got some direct cash assistance. But I think basically we are going to need something much, much more extensive, much more long-term. I personally believe that parents who have children in virtual school should be being paid to conduct virtual school. Virtual school for many parents is equivalent to a full-time job, especially for young children. And I think that the government should be compensating parents for that. I think that in terms of the CARE Act, I think the sort of temporary ideas around paid leave were a step in the right direction, given how far outside the norm America is in terms of, not having guaranteed paid leave or paid sick days. But as we're seeing, many kids are going to be out of school, perhaps for an entire year. 2 weeks for a sick kid or 12 weeks even for, a kid out of school is just completely inadequate. All of that was thinking that this is going to be a short-term thing. And we are now realizing what a long-term crisis this is. So I'm a big advocate of thinking about guaranteed income payments. I'm a big advocate. Basically, cash works, direct cash payments are the fastest things. We don't need to create a bunch of bureaucratic programs, but we do need to support people financially, especially given, the collapse of the childcare industry and all of the caregiving responsibilities parents are faced with.
Well, you mentioned not wanting or needing a lot of new bureaucracy, but you do highlight a potential new program that could be created that could help working mothers, especially during this pandemic, and you call it CareCorps. So maybe explain what you mean by that and really how it would function.
So one idea that I had in the throes of taking care of my newborn twins during the pandemic was the idea that we should think about an AmeriCorps for care or Peace Corps for care. So rather than right now, we're at risk of 50% of all of the childcare slots in the country going away because that's another sort of, I think, massive need. CARES Act 2.0 that we need a child care bailout. But, there's also this mismatch because there's a lot of young adults who maybe are taking time off of school or don't have great job prospects because of the economy. Like, could we match young adults with people who need help with tutoring, virtual school, small pods for care, and sort of make care a patriotic endeavor and sort of part of our national call to help each other during this time. And, going to different places where schools are closed. And, this was something that I was thinking about this summer when I think the reality of the fact that schools were not going to reopen had not really set in. And I think that was a real missed opportunity. But I think that there's still a long-term need for this, whether it's remediation work, tutoring, after-school programs, as public schools are very, very going to be very slow, I think, in the recovery process of really getting back to full speed.